feel like just a minute, without deviation, hesitation, or repetition. So I'm going to talk a little bit about consciousness, worldviews, and paradigm shift. Starting with the frames of reference here, and here are a couple of quotations from quite well-known people. Neither the testimony of all the fellows of the Royal Society nor the evidence of my own senses could ever lead me to believe in what is clearly impossible. And this is Helmholtz, famous 19th century scientist, to Sir William Barrett, FRS. The next one is a remark from Charles Richet, who was a Nobel Prize winner in physiology. And he was explaining to his colleagues that he'd done these various experiments. And in exasperation, he said at the end, "I didn't say it was possible, I just said it was true." So things are only impossible in terms of assumptions. Alfred Russel Wallace, co-founder of natural selection with Darwin, he wrote, "My first great lesson in the inquiry into these obscure fields of knowledge was never to accept the disbelief of great men or their accusations of imposture or imbecility as of any weight when opposed to the repeated observation of facts by other men admittedly sane and honest, including himself." And he concludes, "Whenever scientific men of any age have denied facts of investigators on a priori grounds, they've always been wrong." And that's no less true now than it was over 100 years ago when it was first uttered. Richard Jewett wrote a very good book on worldviews, and he explains the worldview is not merely a collection of separate, independent, unrelated beliefs, but instead an intertwined, interrelated, interconnected system of beliefs. And it's assumed by people who hold a particular worldview that their worldview is complete and adequate, and it provides a lens through which they can understand and explain reality. So beliefs and facts are true if they fit into this existing system. Jung remarked once that the basic error of worldviews is a tendency to pretend to be the truth of things themselves when they're actually only a name we give. Now, what I have devised myself in thinking about this is what I call the worldview matrix. And that consists of presuppositions, assumptions, and paradigm. This is from Thomas Kuhn, the idea of paradigm. Therefore, ideas about reality, the nature of knowledge, and how to evaluate knowledge and interpret evidence. The use of logic and reasoning in relation to particular assumptions or points of departure. And the explanation literally means to unfold something. So to explicare is to unfold. Elements of a worldview, and these again my own suggestions: nature of cosmic intelligence, is there a cosmic intelligence? Nature of the cosmos, the origins of life, origins of intelligence, nature of consciousness and the self, the nature of the body, do we have different bodies, the nature of the body in relation to death, is there a purpose and end to life, is there any meaning, and what are the ethics of the society? And what's the relationship between self and others and between the individual and the collective? So we currently have a dominant worldview in science, which is called in a number of different terms: materialism, naturalism, humanism, physicalism. And in very broad terms, I would argue that these views are either agnostic or atheist so far as God is concerned. Cosmos and nature is a picture of Big Bang evolution, but nature is interpreted as mechanistic, in a mechanistic way. Consciousness produced by the brain. Death is the extinction of consciousness. There's no intrinsic meaning or purpose in life. And ethics are based on utilitarianism and more modern times consumerism. So looking at specifics now, focusing on the hard problem, and the hard problem was formulated by David Chalmers. And how does the brain generate consciousness? Well, of course, the assumption is in that question is that the brain does generate consciousness. And the evidence for this is all of normal science. But there's a challenge of anomalies. And I get to focus on one particular anomaly here today, veridical out-of-body experiences, namely experiences out of the body that are then subsequently verified by people who were also present at the scene. So if the assumption is that the brain is the mind, or the brain gives rise to consciousness and death is extinction, then out-of-body experiences must be defined as hallucinations. But if you have an out-of-body experience which turns out to be a true record of events, as in one of Van Lommel's cardiac arrest patients, then you've got a real problem so far as the this interpretation that it's a hallucination. So the evidence in out-of-body experiences clashes with the assumption, which some people call fundamaterialism. And this is a cartoon courtesy of Peter Fenwick. If you're suddenly this tall, can see yourself on the operating table, you're dead. So what's the next move? Do you accept the evidence and enlarge your paradigm, or do you reject the evidence and cling to the paradigm? And there's so much confirmation in the view of people who subscribe to the existing materialistic worldview. They find it very difficult to accept that there could be evidence against it. And here is one psychologist who said, even if I were to have a near-death experience myself, I would conclude I was hallucinating rather than believe that my mind can exist independently of my brain. And so this shows the strength of feeling in sticking to the existing system of beliefs. So my conclusion is that the current mechanistic assumption that the brain generates consciousness is simply too limited. And there are additional anomalies that I could have talked about besides the veridical out-of-body experience, namely the work of Ian Stevenson, Children Remember Previous Lives, and there's very extensive evidence of ostensible communications from the deceased. So I believe that we need a new and wider science of consciousness that is able to account for the whole range of human experience. Thank you very much.